The starship Harmonious Light hung in the silent blackness above the blue and white planet. On the bridge, Captain Kale watched the world below. His people, the Vesperi, were graceful and slender. They came from a gentle world of soft light and low gravity. The planet on his screen was not gentle. It was listed in the Galactic Consensus Records as GC 7718, but every species knew it by its common name, Apex Peril, a death world. His first officer, Tarek, stood beside him. Tarek's large eyes were fixed on the data streaming across the console. Atmospheric composition, toxic levels of oxygen, gravity 1.0 standard galactic gravity, surface temperature variance, extreme, biosign density, catastrophic. His voice was tight. Every scan confirms the stories, Captain. This place is a factory of death. Captain Kale nodded slowly. He had read the reports. The planet was a legend of horror. Its air was corrosive. Its weather was violent. Its plants produced poisons. Its animals were armored and venomous. This very land shook without warning. Microorganisms waged invisible war on everything. For a Vesperi, even a short visit required full environmental armor and a strong will. Our mission is simple, Kale said to his crew. We locate the ancient survey probe, retrieve its data core, and leave. No contact with the native life. No unnecessary exposure. We will be a shadow. Quick and quiet. In the medical bay, the young medic Lyra prepared her kits. Her hands trembled slightly. Her job was to monitor the crew's vital signs for any breach, any sign of infection or toxin. The readouts from the planet were a nightmare scroll of biological threats. Pollen that could trigger system-wide shutdowns. Bacteria that could dissolve Vesperi tissue in hours. Viruses of such complexity they seemed designed. She took a slow breath to calm her inner tremors. They would be careful. They had to be. The shuttle detached from the Harmonious Light and began its descent. The ride was smooth at first, then it hit the atmosphere. For the Vesperi, it felt like being inside a drum that was being beaten by a giant. The shuttle shook and rattled. Alerts chimed as external temperatures soared. Tarek gripped his seat, his knuckles pale. On their world, storms were gentle breezes. This was an assault. They broke through the clouds. Below them sprawled a land of intense green and rugged gray mountains. It was the region called the Korean Peninsula. It was beautiful, in a fierce, untamed way. The shuttle set down in a quiet valley, far from the glowing clusters of city lights their sensors had detected. The hatch opened with a hiss. The first thing that hit them was the gravity. It was a heavy, constant weight, pushing down on their slender frames. Moving felt like wading through thick liquid. The second thing was the air. Even through their suit filters, they could sense the potent mix of it, damp soil, growing things, a sharpness they knew was the infamous oxygen. Lyra immediately checked her scanner. The air around them was teeming with microscopic life, pollens, and spores. It was, from her view, a cloud of invisible daggers. Form a perimeter, Tarek ordered his 2 security officers. They moved out, their movements slow and careful in the high gravity. They scanned the tree line. Every thermal signature was a potential predator. Every rustle in the grass was a threat. Captain Kale stepped out last, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. He looked around. The valley was peaceful. A stream bubbled.
Beurre sang.
But he saw the danger. The dense forest could hide anything. The rocks could conceal venomous crawlers. The very grass could have cutting edges. Death was in the details here. Probe signal is strong, Tarek reported, pointing up the valley slope. 500 meters that way, near the base of that rocky hill. Let's move, Kale said. Stay alert. They began their slow, heavy walk. Every step was an effort. They passed a patch of flowers. Lyra's scanner screamed a warning. Captain, neurotoxin aerosols detected from those blooms. The group gave the flowers a wide, careful berth. A small, furry creature with bright eyes scurried across their path. Tarek's weapon snapped up. The creature paused, looked at them, and then vanished into a hole. Just a herbivore? Tarek muttered, lowering his weapon. but his heart was racing. On his world, nothing looked that confident. Meanwhile, several kilometers away, Jinwoo Park was checking the sensor feeds from his weather stations. He was a geological survey specialist, though now he mostly managed the land for a small organic farm and research outpost. His tablet pinged with an alert, an unusual atmospheric entry and a heat signature in the next valley. No scheduled flights. He zoomed in on the satellite overlay. He saw the metallic shape of the shuttle, clear as day, nestled in the pine trees. He didn't feel fear. He felt a deep, pulsing curiosity that he called Sumin Lee. She was a structural engineer, working on reinforcing an old forestry bridge a few valleys over. Her face appeared on his screen, framed by her hard hat and a messy bun. "You seeing this, Jinwoo?" she asked, her tone practical. "I am. Not one of ours," Jinwoo said, his voice calm. "Military? Doesn't look like any design I know. Too smooth. Foreign, maybe?" Sumin shrugged. "Well, they picked a rough spot to land. That hillside is unstable after the spring melt. Want to go take a quiet look? I can be there in 20 minutes. Jinwoo considered. It was the responsible thing to do. Someone was on the land, possibly in need of help, possibly lost. "Okay, meet at the ridge above Pine Creek. Bring your kit. Quiet approach." "Always am," Sumin said with a slight smile, and the call ended. Back in the valley, the Vesperi had found their probe. It was a rusted metal sphere, half buried in dirt and roots. As Tarek and an officer began to carefully dig it out, Lyra monitored their suits. She called out a constant stream of warnings. "Suit integrity at 98%. Filter load is increasing. Elevated heart rates for all personnel, consistent with gravity stress. Local insectoid life forms are approaching. They appear investigative." Small flies buzzed around their helmets. A line of ants marched over Tarek's boot. To the Vesperi, each was a potential carrier of doom. They worked with nervous, deliberate care. It was then that Captain Kale's motion sensor chimed softly. He turned. 2 figures were walking down the slope towards them. They moved between the trees with an easy, rolling grace that seemed impossible in the heavy gravity. They were not in armor. They wore simple, sturdy trousers and jackets. One, a male, had a pack on his back. The other, a female, carried a long, thin case. Kale felt a cold shock. "Contact," he whispered into the comms. His team froze, turning slowly. They saw the 2 natives. The humans stopped about 30 meters away. They did not look afraid. They looked curious. Jinwoo raised a hand in a universal gesture of greeting. He spoke, and the translator in Kale's suit processed the strange sounds. "Hello?" Jinwoo's voice came through, filtered but clear. "Do you need assistance? This is private land." Captain Kale stared. They were exposed. Their skin was bare to the air, to the pollens, to everything. They stood straight under the crushing gravity. They were looking at the Vesperi's advanced shuttle and sleek suits with the calm interest of someone looking at a strange, but not alarming, new tool. The warning echoed in Kale's mind. Deathworld. Apex peril. And its natives were walking through it like it was a garden. He took a step forward, his suit servos whining with the effort. He had to make first contact. He had to be cautious. But as he looked at the 2 relaxed, strong humans, he felt the first crack in everything he thought he knew. This was not what he expected. Not at all. The 2 groups stood facing each other in the quiet valley. The Vesperi, sealed in their shining suits, looked like visitors from a sterile future. The humans, in their work clothes, looked like they belonged to the earth and pine trees around them. Captain Kale kept his body language calm. His training took over. First contact protocol. He gestured to his own chest. "I am Captain Kale. We are visitors. We mean no harm." The translator made his voice sound flat and careful. Jinwoo nodded. "I am Jinwoo Park. This is Sumin Lee." He did not step closer. He kept his hands where they could be seen. "You are a long way from home, Captain." "We are," Kale agreed. He looked at their faces, then at their simple clothes again. The question burned in him. He had to ask. "You are not protected." the atmosphere, the biological threats. Your scans show no shielding. Sumin glanced at Jinwoo, a small smile on her lips. She understood the confusion. We are protected, she said, tapping her own chest. From the inside, our bodies are used to it. We call it an immune system. Lyra, the medic, could not stay quiet. Her voice came over the Vesperies' shared comms, but also through Kale's external speaker in her shock. Impossible. The pathogen load is catastrophic. Your outer layer should be dissolving. Jinwoo's eyebrows went up slightly. He looked at his own hand, turning it over. We seem to be intact. His tone was dry, factual. The air is clean here. A bit of pollen, maybe. It is spring. Tarek, the security officer, shifted his weight. His suit whined. He was watching the humans' hands, their eyes, the long case Sumin carried. What is in the container? He asked, his voice tense. Sumin smoothly knelt, placed the case on the ground, and opened it. Inside were not weapons but tools. A high-powered laser level, a compact drill, digital calipers, and rolls of reinforced polymer tape. Work tools, she said. I am an engineer. We were checking a bridge nearby. She picked up the laser level. For measuring. The Vesperi stared. They carried tools. They were working. On a Deathworld, they were doing construction. The cultural disconnect was a wall. Captain Kale tried to process it. You live here? On the surface? Permanently? Of course, Jinwoo said. Billions of us do. All over the planet. A silence fell, broken only by the sound of the stream and the birds. Then the sky, which had been a clear blue, began to change. Fast. Dark clouds gathered over the western ridge. The wind picked up, smelling of rain and wet stone. It was a sudden, classic mountain weather shift. To Jinwoo and Sumin, it was normal. They glanced at the sky. Spring shower, Sumin noted. Might get some hail. To the Vesperi, it was an emergency. Alerts chimed inside their helmets. Their sensors detected the rapid pressure drop, the temperature plunging. Hail was classified as impact debris. On their world, precipitation was a soft mist. We must return to the shuttle, Tarek said, his voice urgent. The atmospheric event is escalating. Captain Kale hesitated. They had not secured the probe, but the protocol was clear. Avoid environmental hazards. Agreed. Back to the craft. The humans watched as the Vesperi turned and began their slow, labored walk back toward their shuttle. The first heavy drops of rain began to fall, splattering on the Vesperi's smooth suits. Then, small pieces of ice began to mix in. Pellets of hail, the size of peas, rattled down. The Vesperi moved faster, but their movement in the high gravity was a clumsy, shuffling jog. The hail tapped and bounced off their helmets. Lyra was reading out the impact force data, her voice rising in fear. Jinwoo and Sumin simply pulled the hoods of their jackets up over their heads. The hail stung a little, but it was just weather. They followed the aliens at a normal walking pace, easily keeping up with their struggling run. They reached the shuttle. The hatch was still open. The Vesperi hurried inside, pressing buttons to close the door. Kale turned at the threshold. He saw the two humans standing calmly in the falling hail, waiting outside. They had not asked to come in. They were just standing there. A strange feeling, something like shame, touched Kale. They were hiding in their metal shell. The natives were standing in the storm. He gestured sharply. Please, come inside. You will be injured. Jinwoo and Sumin exchanged a look, then nodded. They stepped up into the shuttle just as the hatch closed behind them. They stood in the airlock, dripping water on the clean floor. Inside the main cabin, the Vesperi were removing their helmets, their delicate faces showing relief. The shuttle was quiet and safe. Then, they all stared at the humans. Water dripped from Jinwoo's jacket. A small bruise was forming on Sumin's temple where a larger hailstone had hit. They were breathing the shuttle's recycled air. They were completely unsealed. Inside their craft, Lyra gasped and took an involuntary step back, as if they were radiating disease. It's just water, Sumin said. wiping her face with her sleeve. She looked around the shuttle's interior. Her engineer's eyes took in the design, the smooth surfaces, the lack of visible joins. "Beautiful craft," she said. "But the landing strut has a stress fracture." Tarek blinked. "What?" Sumin pointed to the forward landing leg, visible through a viewport. "There, at the top joint. The thermal differential from your descent, plus our cold ground. The composite shrank faster than the alloy frame. It's a hairline crack now, but it will spread if you lift off under stress." Captain Kale moved to the viewport. He saw nothing. Their sensors had not flagged it. "Are you certain?" Jinwoo joined him, squinting. "She's right. See that faint line? It follows the grain of the composite." Sumin was already opening her wet jacket and pulling a small cylinder from an inner pocket. "I have a quick-set polymer sealant. It's not a fix, but it will hold for one liftoff. If you want it." The offer hung in the air. The Vesperi were stunned. In the span of minutes, these humans had ignored a toxic atmosphere, walked through a hailstorm, boarded an alien ship, and then diagnosed a problem in their advanced technology that they themselves had missed. And now they were offering to help fix it. Captain Kale looked from the serious face of Sumin to the calm face of Jinwoo. The warning in his mind, Deathworld, was now mixed with a profound, unsettling confusion. These were not monsters struggling to survive. They were something else. They were problem solvers. "Please," Captain Kale said, his voice softer, "if you would not mind, we would be grateful." Sumin nodded and stepped toward the airlock to go back outside into the hail. She did not ask for a suit. She just pulled her hood back up. The hail stopped as quickly as it had begun. Sumin went to work on the landing strut with efficient, practiced movements. Jinwoo stayed inside the shuttle with the Vesperi. The atmosphere was tense, but not hostile. It was the tension of two groups trying to understand an impossible puzzle. Captain Kale watched Sumin through the viewport. She was not wearing any protective gear. She applied the sealant from her small tube, smoothing it over the hairline crack with a gloved finger. The action was so simple, so basic. On their world, a ship repair required drones, diagnostic scans, and sterile environments. Here, a human used a tube from her pocket. "Your companion is very skilled," Kale said to Jinwoo. "She is an engineer," Jinwoo replied. "Bridges, buildings. She understands how things hold together and how they break." He looked around the shuttle cabin again. "Your technology is very advanced, but perhaps it is not made for our kind of weather." Tarek, who had been silently observing Jinwoo, finally spoke. "Your kind of weather is erratic and violent. Our homeworld has a stable climate. Predictable." Jinwoo just nodded. "Predictable is nice, but predictable does not teach you how to fix a crack in the rain." Before anyone could answer, the ground moved. It was not a big movement. To Jinwoo, it felt like a large truck rumbling by on a distant road. A slight vibration through his boots. A faint rattle from a tool on a bench. To the Vesperi, it was an earthquake. Their world had no tectonic shifts. The vibration was a terrifying, unknown force. Alarms shrieked inside the shuttle. The craft groaned on its landing struts. Lyra cried out, losing her balance. Her inner ear, evolved for a calm world, could not process the sudden, rolling motion. She stumbled into a console. Tarek grabbed a handle, his face pale. Captain Kale's knees bent awkwardly as he fought to stay upright against the unfamiliar sensation. "Seismic event! The ground is unstable," Tarek shouted, his voice tight with panic. The vibration lasted for 8 seconds. Then it was gone. The quiet of the valley returned. Birds started singing again. Jinwoo had placed a hand on the wall to steady himself. He looked at the alarmed aliens. "It's okay," he said, his voice calm. "It was a minor one. A 3.2 maybe. Very deep. It's already over." Lyra was on the floor, breathing hard. "Over? The planet itself is attacking." "No," Jinwoo said, offering her a hand to help her up. She stared at his bare hand for a moment before taking it carefully with her gloved one. "It's just the planet settling, like a house creaking. It happens here." Captain Kale straightened his uniform, trying to recover his dignity. His heart was still beating fast. You are not afraid of this? Jinwoo thought for a second. We respect it. We build for it. Our buildings are flexible. We have early warning systems. But fear, he shook his head. It is a part of the land, like the wind. Sumin came back inside then, wiping her hands on a cloth. Seal is done. It needs an hour to cure fully. She saw their faces. What happened? A small tremor, Jinwoo said. Sumin nodded. Felt it. Barely a tickle. She put her sealant away. The probe. You were digging it out. We can help you if you want. Get you on your way faster. The Vesperi were silent. They were being offered help. From the natives of the Deathworld. The ones who stood calmly through hail and earthquakes. Captain Kale made a decision. He needed to understand. We would accept your help. Thank you. The two groups walked back to the probe site together. The walk was slower because the Vesperi were still shaken. Jinwoo and Sumin matched their pace. At the site, Tarek and his officer resumed digging carefully around the old probe. The humans watched. The Vesperi used small, precise tools, brushing away dirt like archaeologists handling a precious artifact as Tarek worked. A flying insect landed on the shoulder of his white suit. It was yellow and black. A wasp. Lyra's scanner beeped frantically. She read the display, her voice a whisper of horror. Vespula genus. Venomous. The stinger is a modified egg-laying tube. It delivers a complex protein toxin designed to cause intense pain and tissue damage. It can sting repeatedly. She took a step back. Do not move, Tarek. Do not agitate it. Tarek froze. He was a security officer trained for threats. But this was a tiny, buzzing creature. His weapon was useless. He was paralyzed. Jinwoo and Sumin both took a step forward to look. Sumin tilted her head. Ah, a wasp. She's probably just curious about the shiny suit. Curious? Tarek whispered, not moving his head. They're territorial, but not stupid, Jinwoo said. He moved slowly, not toward Tarek, but toward a small bush nearby. He plucked a leaf. He walked back, holding the leaf out. Just stay still. He gently brushed the leaf near the wasp. It was not a fast movement. It was a slow, guiding push. The wasp buzzed, annoyed, and flew off the suit and away into the trees. Tarek let out a long, shaky breath. His whole body relaxed. You just, Lyra stammered. It didn't want to sting, Jinwoo said, dropping the leaf. Stinging is its last resort. It dies if it stings. It would rather just fly away. He looked at their terrified faces. You have to read them. Quick movements scare them. They think you're a threat. Sumin pointed to a plant near Lyra's foot. Speaking of threats, you might want to step away from that.
Lyra jumped.
What is it? Stinging nettle, Sumin said. The tiny hairs on the leaves inject chemicals. It causes a burning rash for an hour or so. Lyra looked down at the innocent-looking green plant. She scrambled 2 meters away. Her scanner was now confirming. Irritant hairs, formic acid, histamines. She had almost touched it. How do you live surrounded by this? Her voice was a mix of awe and terror. Jinwoo walked over to a different, broad-leafed plant a few feet away. He picked a leaf. With this, he handed the leaf to Lyra.
Dok liaf.
The juice soothes the sting. Often they grow near each other. Lyra held the leaf as if it were a precious gem. A cure growing right next to the poison. It was a logic her world did not have. Tarek finally spoke, his pride wounded. So your world is just one problem after another. Hail, earthquakes, poisonous insects, toxic plants. Jinwoo looked at him, then at the hills, the trees, the stream. He didn't see problems. He saw a system. A complex, beautiful, sometimes harsh system. No, he said quietly. It's not a list of problems. He paused, searching for the right words. It is a set of lessons. Each one teaches you something. The tremor teaches you to build strong foundations. The nettle teaches you to pay attention. The wasp teaches you calmness. He met Captain Kale's gaze. You see attacks. We see instructions. Captain Kale stared at him. The idea was so foreign it was difficult to hold in his mind. A world that taught, a death world as a teacher. At that moment, the probe came loose from the soil with a soft crunch. The Vespri had it. Their mission was nearly complete. But Captain Kale no longer felt the urgency to leave. He felt an urgency to understand. The probe was a dull metal sphere, now free from the earth. Tarek and his officer placed it carefully on a floating stretcher. The mission was technically a success. They had their objective, but no one moved to go back to the shuttle. A heavy silence had fallen, filled with the alien birdsong and the bubbling stream. Captain Kale was looking at Jean Wu. The human's words echoed in his mind. Instructions. He watched Jean Wu look at the rocky hillside, his eyes tracking the lines of stone and soil like he was reading a page in a book. He watched Sumin kick a small rock, listening to the sound it made when it hit the ground, as if testing the earth itself. They weren't just surviving the chaos. They were analyzing it, interpreting it. Your shuttle seal needs time to cure, Sumin said, breaking the quiet. An hour at least. You are welcome to wait at our shelter. It's dry and we have tea. She said it the way one might invite a neighbor in during a rainstorm. The Vespri looked at each other. Protocol screamed against it. Enter a native structure? Consume local organic matter? It was a list of contamination risks. But the protocol was written for death worlds, for monsters. These people were not monsters. They were calm. And Captain Kale's curiosity was now stronger than his fear. We would be honored, Kale said. Jean Wu led the way. The humans walked with their easy, ground-eating stride. The Vespri followed, their movements still slow and heavy in the high gravity. They walked for about 15 minutes, leaving the wild valley and coming to a cleared area. There was a small, sturdy building made of local stone and treated wood. It had a wide roof and a covered porch. A few simple machines were parked nearby. It looked functional and strong, built to last. Inside, it was warm and dry. The humans hung their damp jackets on hooks. The Vespri remained in their suits, but they did not seal their helmets. They stood, feeling out of place amid the simple furniture and the smell of wood and herbs. Sumin filled a kettle from a tap and put it on a heating plate. Jean Wu took cups from a shelf. The normalcy of it was jarring to the aliens. This was a home, not a fortress. Captain Kale walked to a large window. It looked out over the same valley where their shuttle sat. The view was peaceful, green and serene, but he now knew the truth of it. The peace was a mask over a world of constant, rigorous challenge. How? He finally asked, turning from the window. His voice was quiet. Your report will say you are strong. Your immune systems are powerful. You move easily in high gravity. But your technology here, he gestured at the simple room, is not what we expected. If your world is so harsh, why are you not more advanced? In protection, in weapons. Jean Wu brought 2 cups of steaming tea to the small table. He sat down. Sumin joined him, leaving 2 other chairs for the aliens. Kale and Tarek slowly, awkwardly, sat down. Lyra remained standing, her medical scanner still quietly humming in her hand, taking in the shocking normalcy of the room's biome. You see a harsh world and think we must spend all our energy fighting it, Jean Wu said. That we must build bigger walls, stronger shields. He took a sip of his tea. That is not the lesson it teaches. The lesson is adaptation. Not fighting the wave but learning to swim. Our technology, it works with the world. Our buildings bend in the wind. Our medicines come from the plants. Our strength comes from living here, every day. Sumin nodded. You asked how we are not more advanced in protection. But we are. Our protection is inside us. It was built by generations of living here. It is the most advanced system we have. Lyra spoke up, her medic's mind latching onto the idea. Evolutionary adaptation. But the speed, the diversity of threats, it should be impossible. It wasn't just evolution, Jean Wu said. His eyes grew distant, looking past them at something only he could see. It was also memory. It was story. He was silent for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The Vesperi waited. My great-grandfather, Jinwoo began, his voice softer. His name was Tae-shik Park. He was a boy during a war. A very bad war here on the peninsula. I do not tell you a story of battles or heroes. I tell you a story of a winter. He held his cup in both hands. The fighting came to his village. Everything was gone. His family was scattered. He was alone, maybe 10 years old. And it was winter. Korean winter in the mountains. The cold here. It is a cold that can kill you in hours. The wind cuts like a knife. The snow hides everything. Sumin listened quietly. She had heard the story before. It was a story many families knew in different ways. He had no special suit. No heater. No advanced tools. He had the clothes on his back and his own mind. Jinwoo continued. He found a cave. He learned to make a small fire without letting the smoke be seen. He learned which tree bark he could chew for moisture when the stream was frozen. He watched the animals. The squirrels had stored certain nuts. He found the stores. He took a little, not all. He learned to read the clouds to know when a bigger storm was coming. He learned to listen to the wind in the pines. A different sound meant the temperature was dropping fast. Jinwoo looked at Captain Kale. The world was trying to kill him, yes. The cold, the hunger, the loneliness. But it was also teaching him. Every day was a lesson. Find water. Find food. Stay warm. Read the signs. It forced him to see details no one else would see. It forced his body to endure what it thought it could not endure. He survived that winter. He found his family later. He lived a long life. He put his cup down. He was not a soldier. He was a boy. And this world, at its hardest, trained him to be a survivor. Trained his eyes, his ears, his mind. That training, it did not end with him. He taught his children how to read the weather, how to find water, how to endure. We do not all live in mountains now. We have cities, heat, supermarkets. But the training is still there. In our bones. In our stories. We go to the mountains for fun. We call it hiking, camping. It is a game to us now. But the game keeps the skills sharp. The room was utterly silent. The only sound was the gentle hiss of the kettle cooling. Captain Kale understood. It was not about the technology of the shield. It was about the philosophy of the dodge. The planet was not an enemy to be defeated with force. It was a relentless, unforgiving teacher. A teacher that trained resilience, observation, and adaptability right into the DNA of a species, and then reinforced it through culture and memory. A training realm, Kale whispered, the phrase forming on its own. Jinwoo looked at him. What? Kale's eyes were wide with the scale of the idea. You have corrected us. We called it a death world. Place of only death. But it is not. It is a place of forging. A training realm. The most intense one imaginable. Sumin smiled, a small, proud smile. She leaned forward. Exactly. Think about it. Our children play in these woods. They learn to identify which mushrooms are food and which will kill them. They fall out of trees and break bones that heal stronger. Our students study earthquakes and hurricanes not just as disasters, but as forces to understand and build for. We climb mountains for a view. We swim in oceans for pleasure. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, the training continues. Lyra's scanner had gone quiet. She was just staring at the two humans. The story of the boy in the winter had changed everything. They weren't superpowered beings. They were the products of an endless, generational curriculum of survival. Their normal was the galaxy's extreme. Tarek, the skeptic, finally spoke, his voice lacking its earlier edge. So you are all graduates. Jinwoo met his gaze and gave a single, slow nod. We are. Every single human alive is a graduate of the same school. Some of us just paid more attention in class than others. He said it lightly, but the weight of the truth settled over the Vesperi. They had come to retrieve a piece of old technology. Instead, they had discovered a terrifying, awe-inspiring fact. Humanity's greatest strength was not something they built. It was something they had earned, day by painful day, lesson by harsh lesson, on the most demanding training ground in the cosmos. The words hung in the warm, quiet shelter. Training realm. They seemed to change the very air. Captain Kale looked at his own gloved hands, then at Jinwoo's bare, calloused ones resting on the wooden table. He looked at Lyra, whose medical scanner was now put away, her face showing only stunned wonder. He looked at Tarek, whose usual suspicion had been replaced by a deep, thoughtful frown. It was Sumin who broke the silence. The practical engineer. "Your sealant should be cured by now," she said, finishing her tea. "The polymer sets fast in cool, dry air." Her words were a return to the immediate, the physical. The Vesperi seemed to blink, coming back from the vast idea to the small room. The probe was waiting. Their shuttle was repaired. It was time to go. Yet, leaving felt wrong now. Captain Kale stood up slowly. "Thank you for your hospitality. And for your correction." The word was inadequate, but it was all he had. They filed out of the shelter. The sky was clear again, a deep blue. The sun was warm. It was a beautiful Earth afternoon. The Vesperi now saw the beauty, but they could not unsee the lessons hiding within it. The beautiful flower might hold poison. The soft grass might hide biting insects. The calm air could turn to hail in minutes. It was all part of the curriculum. The walk back to the shuttle was different. The Vesperi were no longer just afraid. They were observing. They watched how Jinwoo's eyes constantly scanned the path ahead. Not in fear, but in casual assessment. They saw how Sumin listened to the sound of the stream, her head tilted. "You hear something?" Tarek asked her, his voice less confrontational, more curious. Sumin nodded. The water's sound changed. Just a little more rush. Means more meltwater is coming down from the higher peaks. Probably from the hail melting. She pointed to a bend in the stream ahead. The bank on the outside of that bend is undercut. With more water, it might slump a bit. Nothing major. Just how the stream shapes the land. She said it as simply as someone commenting on a clock ticking. To her, it was just another piece of data from the environment. To the Vesperi, it was a stunning display of real-time environmental analysis, done without any instruments. They approached the shuttle. The repaired landing strut looked fine, but their attention was pulled to the hillside above it. The same hillside where the probe had been buried did a low, deep groan, like a giant shifting in its sleep, rolled through the ground. This was not a sharp tremor. This was a slow, grinding sound of moving earth. All eyes snapped to the slope. A section of it, about 20 meters wide, was moving. Soil darkened with moisture from the hail and the new meltwater. Rocks trembled. A crack appeared at the top of the slope, snaking its way down like a living thing. "A landslide," Tarek shouted. This was not a vague seismic alarm. This was a visible physical collapse, and it was heading directly for their shuttle. Protocol took over. Captain Kale's mind, trained for spaceborne dangers, assessed instantly. The slide was too wide to outrun. The shuttle's engines needed time to spool for a vertical lift. They did not have that time. "Back! Get back to the treeline," he ordered, his voice commanding but edged with the chill of impending loss. Their ship, their way home, was about to be buried. The Vesperi moved, a clumsy, frantic retreat in the heavy gravity. But Jinwoo and Sumin did not run. They shared a single, quick glance. It was not a look of fear. It was a look of shared assessment. Problem had presented itself. They began to speak, their voices calm and rapid, cutting through the panic. "For 100 tons, maybe 5, Jinwoo said, his eyes measuring the sliding mass. "Main force channel is center left," Sumin replied, pointing. "See the bedrock rib on the right? It's deflecting the flow. Need to split it. Divert the main slurry away from the engine nacelles." "Agreed. Use the terrain. The natural gully on the left." They were not just talking. They were already moving. While the Vesperi stumbled back, the humans sprinted toward their work vehicles parked near the shelter. Jinwoo reached his truck. a rugged vehicle with a small crane arm on the back. Sumin went to hers, which had a winch and spools of heavy cable. They worked with a synchronicity that was breathtaking. No orders were given. Each knew what the other was thinking. Jinwoo used his crane arm not to move the landslide, which was impossible, but to grab a large, pre-cut section of steel mesh, the kind used for reinforcing slopes. He swung it around, positioning it like a shield in the path of the slide's left flank. Sumin, meanwhile, was not looking at the landslide. She was looking at two large boulders, each the size of her vehicle, that sat above the gully. She attached heavy-duty polymer cables from her winch to one of them. She wasn't trying to stop the boulder. She was trying to tip it. "Jinwoo, anchor point, now!" she yelled over the growing roar of the earth. Jinwoo had already driven a deep anchor spike into firm ground with a pneumatic hammer. He hooked Sumin's cable to it, creating a pivot point. Sumin gunned her winch. The cable went taut with a sound like a plucked steel cord. The massive boulder groaned, rocked, and then tipped over. Crashed down, not into the landslide's path, but beside it. It acted like a plow, deflecting the flow of mud and rock into the waiting gully, away from the shuttle's left side. The landslide hit Jinwoo's mesh barrier. It buckled, but it held just long enough to further shear the slide's momentum and push more debris into the new channel Sumin had created. It was not a stop. It was a redirection, a masterclass in terrain management. They weren't fighting the planet's power. They were guiding it, just like Jinwoo had guided the wasp with a leaf. The avalanche of dirt and rock poured past the shuttle with a deafening roar. It shook the ground violently. A spray of mud coated one side of the craft. But the main force, the crushing weight, was now flowing harmlessly into the gully and down into the stream bed away from the landing site. The noise subsided. The earth settled. A cloud of dust hung in the air. The Vesperi stood frozen at the tree-line, their suits spattered with mud. They had just witnessed an emergency response that defied all their understanding. There had been no panic, no grand technology, just two humans using local materials and an intimate knowledge of physics and their own land to reroute a natural disaster in under 3 minutes. The shuttle stood, slightly muddy, but intact, unburied. Captain Kale walked forward, his steps slow. He looked at the diverted landslide. He looked at the cleverly placed mesh, now buried but having done its job. He looked at the tipped boulder. Then he looked at Jinwoo and Sumin. They were breathing heavily, covered in sweat and a fine layer of dust. Sumin was coiling her cable. Jinwoo was checking the anchor spike. They were already in the cleanup phase. Kale stopped in front of them. He had no protocol for this. No words from the Galactic Consensus First Contact Manual fit. He saw them now, truly saw them. Not as Deathworld survivors, but as something far more profound. He saw the graduates of the training realm. And he understood that their most terrifying weapon was not strength or immunity. It was a calm, brilliant, instinctual talent for creative problem-solving under extreme, immediate pressure. The universe had thrown a landslide at them, and they had treated it as a final, practical exam. And they had passed. The dust settled slowly in the quiet valley. The stream, now muddy and full of debris from the landslide, roared louder. Birds, which had fled the noise, began to tentatively call again. Jinwoo and Sumin wiped their hands on their trousers. They were dirty and tired, but a look of quiet satisfaction passed between them. Problem had been solved. The shuttle was safe. The Vesperi were not moving. They stood as statues, their gleaming suits now dusted with brown earth. They were not looking at the shuttle. They were looking at the humans. Captain Kale finally took a step forward. Then another. He walked past the diverted river of mud, past the tipped boulder, until he stood directly before Jinwoo and Sumin. He stopped. For a long moment he said nothing. His large, dark eyes studied their faces, the calm in their eyes, the sweat on their brows, the lack of any trace of celebration or fear. They had just done the impossible, and to them it seemed like a day's work. Then Captain Kale did something his crew had never seen before. He reached up with both hands. There was a soft hiss of equalizing pressure as he unlocked the seals at his neck. He lifted his helmet off. The air of Earth touched his face for the first time. It was cool, carrying the scent of pine and wet soil and crushed grass. He took a slow, deliberate breath. His body was screaming at him about pathogens and pollutants, but his mind was in control. This was a gesture, the deepest gesture of respect his people knew. To show your face, to share the air. Behind him, Lyra gasped softly. Tarek stiffened, but he did not protest. Jinwoo and Sumin simply watched, waiting. "You have corrected the galactic consensus?" Captain Kale said. His real voice was softer, more musical than the translator's flat tone. "We came here fearing the realm that created you. We saw only the tests, the gravity, the poison, the storms, the shaking earth." He looked at the landslide path, now quiet. "We did not see the purpose. We did not see the training." He looked back at them, his expression one of profound humility. "You have shown us that this world is not a killer. It is a teacher, the most demanding teacher in the stars. And you are its master students." Sumin gave a small, respectful nod. Jinwoo met the captain's gaze. "We are just people, Captain. This is just our home." "No," Kale said, the word firm with his new understanding. "It is not just a home, and you are not just people. You are a testament to what life can become when it is challenged every single day. Not to destroy it, but to force it to grow stronger, smarter, more adaptable." He paused, the next words feeling monumental. "We will not file our report on Apex Peril, the Deathworld. We will file it on Earth. Class 1 Adaptive Training Realm." The title felt right. It carried the danger, but also the truth. It was a place of forging. Lyra stepped forward then, her own helmet still on, but her face visible behind the visor. Her eyes were wide with a medic's awe. "The physiological implications, your stress response, your neural plasticity under crisis, your collective problem-solving hierarchy. It is not just biological. It is cultural. It is taught." She looked at Jinwoo. "Your story of the boy in the winter. That is the lesson plan." Tarek came forward last. He did not remove his helmet, but he placed his weapon on the ground, a clear gesture of trust. He looked at the mud on the shuttle, then at the simple tools on the humans' trucks. "On our world," he said, his voice rough, "a landslide is an act of God, a reason to abandon a place. We would build a warning and stay away forever. You built a solution in 3 minutes with a winch and a prayer." He shook his head, a gesture of surrender to a greater truth. "We came to retrieve a piece of old metal. We leave having found a new definition of strength." The mood shifted. The mission was over, but the departure was no longer an escape. It was a solemn conclusion. The Vesperi moved with a new, respectful slowness as they loaded the ancient probe into the shuttle. Their movements were still awkward in the gravity, but the frantic fear was gone. It was replaced by a kind of reverence. Jinwoo and Sumin helped them secure the probe, using their own straps to make sure it wouldn't shift. It was a final, silent collaboration. When everything was ready, Captain Kale stood at the foot of the shuttle ramp. He looked at the two humans. "The galaxy is vast, and many of its peoples are fragile. We seek harmony, often through avoidance of danger. You seek harmony through understanding of it. Your way will change how we see many things." He placed a hand over his chest, a Vesperi gesture of heartfelt thanks and farewell. "We will remember the lesson of the training realm." Jinwoo returned a small bow. Sumin gave a wave. "Safe travels, Captain," she said. The Vesperi boarded their shuttle. The hatch closed with a solid thud. The humans walked back to a safe distance. With a low hum that built into a smooth whine, the shuttle's engines powered up. It lifted from the scarred ground, hovering for a moment. It turned slowly in the air, its nose pointing toward the sky. Then, with a bright flash of light and a sound that shook the trees, it shot upwards, becoming a swift, shrinking star until it vanished into the blue silence returned to the valley, deeper now. The only sounds were the churning stream and the wind. Jinwoo and Sumin stood for a minute, looking at the sky where the ship had disappeared. Then Sumin sighed, rolling her shoulders. "Well," she said, That was interesting. I need to check that bridge for any stress from the tremor. Jinwoo nodded, turning to look at the mess of the diverted landslide. And I should survey this slope. See if it's stable now, or if we need to plant some quick-rooting vegetation to hold it. They shared a look. No grand speeches about their place in the cosmos. There was work to do. Their world had presented a new set of conditions. A shifted landscape, a stressed bridge. It was time to adapt, to fix, to understand. They got into their trucks, the engines coughing to life. As they drove off in different directions to attend to their tasks, they were not thinking about galactic classifications or impressing aliens. They were thinking about soil density and load-bearing stresses. They were thinking about the next lesson their world was waiting to teach them. High above, in the quiet of space, the harmonious light prepared for its jump away from the solar system. On the bridge, Captain Kale watched the beautiful, blue-white marble of the training realm grow smaller on the screen. He knew the report he would write would cause shock, debate, and fear across the consensus. But he also knew a new, undeniable truth had been planted in the galaxy. Do not fear the humans because their world tries to kill them. Respect them, be wary of them, because their world has spent millennia teaching them how to survive anything. And as he had seen today, they had been very, very good students. The report from the Harmonious Light arrived at the Galactic Consensus Central Archives. It was a standard mission file, Probe Recovery, GC7718 system. The initial tags auto-populated, Deathworld, Extreme Hazard, No Contact Advised. Captain Kale personally overrode the classification. He deleted the old tags. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before typing the new ones. Class 1 Adaptive Training Realm. Conditional Contact Protocol Advisory. The body of the report was dry and factual. It detailed the atmospheric conditions, the gravitational profile, the seismic activity. But then it deviated from the standard template. There was a section titled, Observations on Native Sapience, designation, Humanity. It did not speak of monsters. It spoke of resilience. It described the physiological adaptations as advanced integrated survival systems. It noted the technological approach as context-optimized, low-energy solutions emphasizing adaptability over brute force mitigation. The most read part of the report became the addendum, the training realm paradigm. It explained the concept, a world where every element, climate, biology, geology, served as a constant interactive training module. A world that did not merely select for strength, but actively instructed in problem-solving, environmental analysis, and collective improvisation under stress. It included, with permission, the story of the boy in the winter. It was filed not as an anecdote, but as a case study in foundational survival pedagogy. The report spread through the consensus like a slow shockwave. At first, there was disbelief, then curiosity, then a dawning uncomfortable on a lush, low-gravity world of floating cities. A Vesperi sociologist studied the report. She watched the attached visual logs, not of the landslide, but of the moments before. She watched the two humans share that single, calm glance. She saw the total absence of panic. She shivered, not from fear, but from the profound difference. Her people would have frozen in debate. The humans had moved into coordinated action. It was a new form of intelligence, one honed by immediate practical exams. On a world of sturdy, mineral-based beings, a military strategist read the report. He focused on the 3-minute landslide response. He ran simulations. With their technology,
Impossible.
with their understanding of terrain and applied physics, it was not just possible, it was elegant. He labeled the file, Strategic Asset, Unconventional Environmental Manipulation. He did not see weapons. He saw a mindset that could turn a planet itself into a tool. The label Deathworld began to fade from the records for Earth. It was replaced by the more accurate and far more intimidating training realm. The connotation shifted entirely. A Deathworld was a place of mindless danger. A training realm implied purpose, a curriculum, and most chillingly, graduates. Back on Earth, Jinwoo and Sumin had no idea. The day after the Vesperi left, Jinwoo was on the phone with a forestry service botanist. discussing the best mix of grasses and shrubs to stabilize the landslide slope. Sumin was under her bridge, tapping supports with a hammer and listening to the ring of the steel, ensuring the tremor hadn't loosened any bolts. A few weeks later, they met for lunch at the shelter. The valley was green again. New growth was already covering the scars of the slide. You ever think about them? Sumin asked, eating a simple bowl of noodles. Jinwoo looked up at the sky. Sometimes. Wonder if they got home okay. Probably. Their ship seemed smart. She sipped her water. Strange, though, to think there's a whole galaxy out there that was scared of this. She gestured to the window, to the sun-dappled trees. Not scared of it anymore, maybe, Jinwoo said. Maybe just respectfully confused. They laughed. It was a quiet, comfortable sound. The idea that their home was a legendary training ground was amusing to them. It was just home. The place where you learned to fix a fence before a storm, where you knew which berries were sweet and which would give you a stomachache, where you built things to last. Meanwhile, the ripple effect continued. A deep space exploration team, facing a sudden asteroid swarm, found their Vespri advisor quietly repeating, "Think like the humans. What is the terrain? What can we use?" They used the gravity of a large asteroid to slingshot to safety, an unconventional move that saved them. A medical conference on a pandemic response debated the human model of adaptive, distributed immune systems versus centralized sterile barriers. Earth was not invaded. It was not swarmed with tourists. The conditional contact protocol advisory was very clear. The training realm was not for the unprepared. Contact would be careful, respectful, and only with those who demonstrated a similar resilience. Years passed. The story of the Harmonious Lights mission became a quiet legend in certain circles. The phrase, "it's an Earth-level problem," entered some galactic lexicons, meaning a challenge that required absolute adaptability and calm creativity. On a clear night, Jinwoo, now older, sat on his porch with his granddaughter on his lap. She pointed to a particularly bright star. "Grandfather, what's that one?" "That one? I'm not sure," he said. "There are so many. Are there people there?" "Maybe. Probably all kinds of people. Are they nice?" He thought of Captain Kale, removing his helmet in the dusty air. He thought of the shared effort to secure the probe. "Some are," he said. "You just have to listen and pay attention. Everyone's world teaches them different things." She nodded, content with the answer, and snuggled against him. In the sky, a satellite passed, a tiny moving dot of human making. On the horizon, the lights of a city glowed. Billions of humans, living their lives, solving their daily problems, completely unaware that out in the vast, dark silence, their planet had a new name. It was not a name of fear. It was a name of the deepest respect. A name that spoke of a relentless teacher and the uniquely capable students it had produced. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson. Underestimate the graduates of the training realm at your peril. But understand them and you might just learn how to survive.